Night Striker is a legendary Taito arcade game and possibly my favorite 3D sprite scaling shooter. Despite its long-held status as a bona fide classic, the game has not been widely available, especially outside of Japan. This will change in 2025 with the release of Operation Night Strikers from M2, continuing their tradition of high-quality, feature-rich Taito ports. The upcoming release will even support the Cyberstick accessory for true analog control like the arcade cabinet, which is a pretty big deal. But what's the story behind this game, and what's the Cyberstick? Let's dive in. In 1987, a young developer named Kenji Kaido joined Taito and began a legendary run directing arcade game titles including Camel Try, Warrior Blade, Sonic Blastman, and Cleopatra Fortune, among others. He would eventually leave Taito to become lead designer on Sony's Ape Escape and producer on Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. But before all of that, he began work on a Taikon game at Taito that was intended to use a moving cradle to rotate the player as they played. Originally envisioned as a kind of tube racing game, the cabinet motion got scrapped and a kind of light projection gimmick was introduced instead. When asked what kind of game could use this technology, Kaido thought racing in a city at night would be the only solution. A producer then asked that shooting be included, and we ended up with Night Striker. The original Japanese arcade game used an analog flight stick and was a sit-down cabinet with this light projection gimmick. The American version of the cabinet had that gimmick, but it also had lights to simulate spinning wheels on the outside of the cabinet. Now, despite the game's success, the porting history of the title is not great. The Sega CD version had to run in the hardware's low resolution mode and features less enemies. However, it has a slick new orange soundtrack to try and make up for it. The PS1 port has more accurate graphics, but a low frame rate, stuttering, less enemies, and a reduced draw distance. The Saturn port, while better than the previous two ports, is still only running at 30 FPS, and it has an unfortunate issue with analog controls. It does add some extra content, which is nice, but it's still not ideal. The PS2 got a port in Taito Memories 2 Gekkan, which is an emulated version of the arcade ROM, but it does not run well, and it's in a blurry 480p resolution like all the Taito Memories PS2 ports. But remember that Cyberstick I mentioned earlier? Well, that's referring to the XE1AJ USB Cyberstick, a new USB-based re-release of a flight stick released for the Sharp X68000 computer in 1990. The re-release was originally meant for use on the Sega Mega Drive Mini 2, which itself held the CD version of Night Striker. It also works on PC. This controller was then added to the Taito Egret II Mini with the release of Taito Arcade Memories Volume 2, which includes the best currently available Night Striker port. It's accurate, it sounds great, it supports analog control, and it has save states. The only downsides are that it's stuck to the Egret II Mini, and it has around 6 frames of input lag according to my tests. Of course, it's also become incredibly expensive on the aftermarket, so even finding a copy for a decent price seems like a pipe dream. And that brings me to today, where I'm going to demo my 1cc of the game on the Egret II Mini hardware. What started as a kind of a meme clear has turned into my favorite official port of the game. While I have no doubt the M2 port will be superior and finally offer us the full package with low input lag, accurate timing, great visuals, and hopefully the bonus content from the Sega CD and Sega Saturn versions, for now this Egret II Mini port gets the job done, and it's a great way to prepare for that upcoming release. Either way, if you've got an old port lying around or you're emulating the game, I'm here to offer a beginner's guide on how to get your first 1 credit clear. The first thing to note is that this game is absolutely best played with an analog joystick. You don't have to go full idiot mode like me and buy a Cyberstick. Any analog stick compatible with your device should do. It's a 1-button game. It is playable with digital controls, it's just not ideal. The next thing you should know is that scoring in this game is kind of odd. I wouldn't stress out about it, but a few key things to know is that You get more points driving on the ground than flying through the air, and you can get insane stacking bonuses by playing as a pacifist and not shooting anything while also taking no damage. We aren't going to bother with either of these, really, since there are no score extents in this game, and we are playing for survival. So, let's begin. You can see here on the borders of the screen that's actually trying to replicate the light projection gimmick from the arcade game. The M2 port is going to have, I think, a much more in-depth emulation of that effect. First thing to note, I am playing with around 20 Hz autofire. I find it just, if you go all the way to 30, you get a bit more gaps in your shots. But either way, this isn't a hard clear. You could probably just play it without autofire if you wanted to, but I prefer playing with turbo. Now there are some fundamental things to know about this game. So the most useful maneuver is going to be what I'm calling circle strafing. I'm sure there's an actual term for it, but basically if you fly around the screen in a circle, it'll just help you avoid aimed bullets, and so many of the bullets in this game are aimed. Keep in mind, you're going to lose shield if you take a hit from a bullet or if you run into an obstacle, so keep that in mind. So you'll see here, yeah, I'm just kind of circling around. Those aimed bullets are never going to hit me. This is a very easy boss. You break the shield and then you hit it itself. Now, this game has a kind of Darius-like stage selection. So you choose, whether you want to go to the factory or the canal. I picked the factory. And then you kind of decide your route as you go. And you're going to get a bonus shield every time you complete a stage, whether you take damage or not or anything like that. So there's no score extends, but if you don't get hit, you can end up with a lot more shields in the final stage. Now these enemies here, they shoot what are probably the most dangerous obstacles in the game, which are those golden missiles. And those do act differently depending on what's shooting them, what stage you're on. Even rank can have an influence on them, I believe. So you do want to, again, utilize circle strafing to lead them away from you and then dodge away. There's a good example of why the analog stick is best when dodging some of these obstacles. You really don't want to be going all the way right and all the way left. You want to be doing a kind of gradual and subtle movements. So yeah, this boss is pretty straightforward. You can kind of just move left and right, avoiding the obstacles and avoiding the bullets. So here I choose the tunnel, and this is, so like I've only cleared this game twice. I cleared it, I don't know, about a month ago, and then I popped it in today to record the clear. And this stage requires some memo, and I had completely forgotten the memo, like when I need to be turning left, when I need to be turning right. So you're going to see me take a few hits, but I kept playing, and there's a good reason for that. Because depending on your health, that has a really big impact on rank. So it influences the next stage a lot, especially the next stage boss. So I'm taking some silly hits there. With save states, you can easily memorize this stage, and you can get an idea of how to do it without taking any, stupid damage like that. But ultimately, as you'll see, it's a pretty forgiving game for a one-credit clear. So the gold missiles in this stage actually just fire directly towards you like a bullet based on your last position. They don't track you, which is interesting. These enemies, everyone you hit is going to spawn those bullets. You can try to pacifist this, but if you just circle strafe and hit them all, you can avoid any damage. Now for this boss, you're going to want to just stay on the ground and kind of spray and pray, paying attention if any of these dogs get a little too close. But yeah, this is the easiest route. It's pretty simple. I think, you know, this is a great beginner's route. Anyone can pull this off. It's honestly pretty free, especially when you've got Turbo Fire on. I'm going to move to the Sky stage, and I'm going to show a pretty important technique for dealing with those golden missiles, and this can apply to a bunch of stages. So the scrolling of the screen in this game is not, you know, just left and right, it's also up and down. So by moving up to the top of the screen and getting ready for when those missiles appear, you can actually do the most effective thing, which is cut them off the screen. If they disappear, there was a bad dodge. If they release and then they disappear off screen, they delete. They don't track from off screen. So you can see there, anytime I'm seeing those bullets, I get them off screen. Or those missiles, sorry, I get them off screen. I don't have to deal with them anymore. It's also easier to dodge just going straight down. So yeah, there's quite a few stages where that can be a really useful technique. I'm sure if you're playing as a pacifist as well, it's going to be pretty important. Now this boss is also entirely free if you're at low rank. So you can see here as these turrets are going to pop up, I'm just taking them out. Now, on my last 1 credit clear, I was on a no-miss pace up to this point. And if you're on a no-miss pace up to this stage, these will start shooting before you can destroy them, and they become actually pretty difficult to dodge and manage. So those hits I took in the last stage actually helped me because it made that boss so easy. I like the temple stage, honestly, just for the aesthetics. I think it's really cool. I mean, this game's got such incredible visuals, cool enemies like this that are really fun to fight, and take good advantage of the analog stick. So they're a bit tricky on digital, but on analog they're really fun to fight. Kind of have to shoot up the totem pole there. And the music, of course, in this game is fantastic. It's great Zintata goodness. Yeah, there I'm just avoiding the kind of spray of bullets, circle strafing, but I unfortunately ran right into I don't know what these are, some kind of pagoda or temple, mini temples. This boss is a little tricky because of the golden missiles again. I wasn't able to dodge that one. You are fighting 3 enemies, of course. But I pushed through, and I will say, as you're playing this game, I really don't recommend getting into the whole Gradius syndrome thing of, oh, I made one mistake, I better start over. It can help rank-wise, and it's a forgiving game. You should just be playing all the way through as much as possible, in my opinion. Unless you die on, stage 1. So here we are in the final stage. Those signs can hit you, so do be careful of them. The overpasses can hit you. You do get a bit of a power-up with that little option that's flying around with you on this stage. And another one of the cool things about this game, every final stage is unique and powers you up in a different way. This is definitely, I think it's the easiest final stage, for sure. Now, The actual like movable area is a little thinner, especially back where it had those kind of yellow buildings, where it's really easy to bump into the buildings on the side of the road here, unlike the first stage. Whereas in the first stage, you've got a pretty wide berth. Here you don't. You do have to be quite careful of how much you're moving, which does make it a little harder to circle strafe. Again, another reason that the analog stick kind of comes in clutch. Much harder to control with the digital. Of course, more golden missiles, so I'm down to one shield. But here we are at the final boss, and you'll see the power of circle strafing. It's just too much for this guy. At this point, it's pretty breezy, pretty easy. You really don't have to worry as long as you're doing a good job moving around the screen at the right pace. Becomes a pretty free battle. Look at that, done. Now that's another thing that I love about this game, is runs are like 12 minutes long-ish. It's a super quick game to run, which is, I think that's always a plus, and it encourages you to go back and just try more routes and go for high scores. Like, I would just wake up in the morning and boot up the Egret II Mini and play this while I'd have a coffee, and it was the perfect length for that kind of experience. So yeah, it's not like a 30-minute or 40-minute run. It's not so intimidating, and definitely worth checking out. I'm really looking forward to the M2 port. I hope you are. I hope you check it out if you get a chance, or if you're thinking about it. And hopefully this helped show you a really easy beginner's run. Sound off in the comments if this helped you, or if you've played Night Striker before. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks for checking the video.